both of us.
Where are you flying out to on the weekend?
Off to Nuremberg, where the HQ is for YT.
Yep.
So go there and just piece a bike together. We've sort of got a bike that's predominantly built, just a few bits and pieces that Jack had to take home. So yeah, go piece that together and get it ready, and then I'll go pick up Jack and Stagsy. I think in Geneva.
Okay, that's sick.
Yeah.
When's the next race again? I don't even remember.
Ludenvial. I think it's the first weekend in September.
Okay.
But
yeah, right.
Yeah, they're going to come over a little bit early, and we'll just do a bit of riding. Well, Jack will do a bit of riding. Hopefully, I'll get to have a spin as well.
You don't get to do much riding when you're out on the benches, hey?
Not really. Gonna try and make a real effort this trip. Like at Worlds, I sort of went to help out and maybe get a little bit of riding in, and just fill in where I need to, like put the pits up and pack down, all that sort of stuff. And one Arvo, we Johnny Thompson from Fit for Racing is the performance manager for YT, and he was like, all right, let's go for a ride. We sort of all looked at each other and we're like, oh, we got dinner, like we got to do all this stuff, and then sort of a few of us just made it happen. Like we skipped dinner, went for a bike ride. It was real fun, and we end up having like a super late dinner at McDonald's or whatever. But it was just so like refreshing, and I think that you just need to make it happen. Like it's not easy, but if you make it happen, it's a real positive thing.
I think, George, are you happy to just kind of keep going and call this episode, or is there anything you want to know?
Yeah, happy. I'm happy to do whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. So
I think Geordie Cortez was saying like the same thing. He tries to make it a thing where he actually goes for a ride at events and stuff, because otherwise you just end up in the same room and you're in the same tent and you're in the same people and you kind of forget where you are.
Yeah, those guys seem to do it really well from the outside looking in. Like you see them on their bike sort of like in the morning and stuff like that, and like at Fort William they were riding back to their ACOM and stuff, like even though it might only just be a short ride or something like that, it's like that you see them making the effort. It's cool.
So yeah, were you just doing stuff for the YT athletes at Worlds?
Yeah, so like Oshin and Sean, they have their mechanics and like all the staff around it. Like they have their normal program basically. Mm-hmm. So they pitted with YT and all that sort of stuff. And so like I'm not helping them so much. Like I'm just another person around the pits to talk to. But we had a couple of athletes that are sponsored and also sort of are in with YT. So for example, who I just sort of like helped at the top of the track with like a warm up and training, did bolt check and stuff on his bike. He is an R&D rider for YT.
Okay.
And then Potty, who has raced and sort of been sponsored by YT for a long time now, South African rider. I just sort of like, I didn't even really help them. I just, where I was needed, I just sort of stepped up.
Mm.
They had their bikes predominantly built and stuff like that. They needed a couple of brake bleeds, and so I just helped out, literally, not anything too much.
Is it pretty cool to chill and relax throughout the weekend a little bit more?
Yeah, one breakfast. I think it was like the first day for maybe track walk or something like that, and we didn't even have to start till sort of like leave breakfast till 9 a.m. And I made a bit of a joke at the table. I was like, "Oh, how chilled is this week? Like, obviously, like the riders and stuff, like you guys have a lot of pressure on, to build throughout the week, but it's quite relaxing." And Gunnar, our team manager, sort of like laughed and looked over, and he's like, "Yeah, it's all right for you. Like everyone else is doing their job." I was like, "Oh yeah, fair enough."
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a pretty chilled week. Like, really nice to get on like on the track and watch some of the riding, and yeah, just I don't know, enjoy. I still spent a lot of time in the pits. I think because I like out with people in our team, but yeah, it was much different to the normal scenario.
Mm. I think everyone like when I saw the team in Tassie, everyone looked like they were just having good vibes and just enjoyed being in the pits.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone gets along really well, which is a little bit surprising. Like I was sort of like a little nervous at the start of the year, just like I guess the whole German stereotype. And yeah, we have a lot of Germans and stuff on the team, but yeah, everyone's fantastic. Like you would have seen the enduro side, I guess. And a lot of the staff do cross over. But yeah, even like a couple of, well, actually, I think there's only one person from the downhill team that doesn't cross over, which is George O'Shea's mechanic.
Yeah, okay.
And he lives here in the UK. And yeah, like I get along with him really well, and like everyone does. Like so it's really cool to. There's just no place for people not to get along in teams anymore. Like everyone needs to be at the top of their game, and if you have like little feuds, it wouldn't work in any team.
How did the whole YT thing come about for you for wrenching?
I've stayed in contact with Jack for a few years now, and when he went to the enduro side, like Canyon had already had a mechanic and all that sort of stuff signed up. So otherwise, might have been with him, like straight from Intense. That was sort of the plan after 2019. But the way it came up with YT is just that I guess Ben, Jack's mechanic from last year, I don't believe was able to do the role this year for, I think it was personal reasons. And so yeah, Jack was looking for a mechanic, and it just happened to work out that I was going to be based in the Northern Hemisphere this year, which is worked out well for YT. I think like, yeah, flying a mechanic halfway across the world several times is obviously super expensive. And it's great to see that is happening for a lot of the Aussie mechanics or Aussie riders. That's really cool. But yeah, I just don't think it was something that they necessarily wanted to do. So yeah, just a few conversations with YT and Jack individually, and sort of just all lined up.
Yeah, it's cool to see like people are switching on to the whole having a mechanic near your home and in your home country kind of works quite well.
Yeah, I still think it's the most positive thing that like a rider can have is a consistent mechanic. Not only like you can travel with the person and stuff like that too, then that makes it a little bit nicer. But yeah, just having like support at home on a regular basis. I'm sure it's different for what each mechanic does when they're home. But when I worked with Jack in the past, like, and I was based in Australia, um, I was there for the whole year. Like,
Yeah.
I was employed and had a salary for the whole year.
Is that different now because you're not kind of working with Jack unless he's racing?
So yes, you still work on a salary and stuff like that, but he has a home mechanic.
Yeah.
Rick Boyle looks after him when he's at home.
Yeah.
So it's just done a whole lot differently.
Yeah. Good old Ricky. That's going to be wild.
Yeah, I bumped into him at Worlds actually. He was over having a holiday,
Yeah, I
and
saw that.
I didn't even realize kind of social media stuff like just scrolling, and it's just mindless. And I didn't even put two and two together that he was there because I had seen some stuff. And then our team manager pulled me aside, and he was just like, "Oh, is Rick here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." And so yeah, we sent him a message, and then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he was around the pits saying hello. So yeah, that was good.
I love how he doesn't take it upon himself to come in and say hi to you guys. Like you've got to invite him. It's such a Ricky
Well,
thing.
I that's just I didn't want to like sort of interrupt the flow or anything like that, but I'm sure he's just enjoying his holiday too.
Mm.
Yeah, had his wife and son there, and his son was frothing on the races and getting all the autographs and stuff like
Sick.
that. So that was cool to see.
It's so good. So good to see. So
Uh,
before, sorry,
sorry.
no, you go ahead.
Oh, I asked Rick. I was like, "Oh, how long since you've been to a World Cup?" He was like, "Oh, probably 20 years or something like that.
The
Long time."
last time it was in Canberra, probably.
Oh yeah, actually I did ask him outside Oz because I knew he would have been to the
Okay.
Oz ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were with Jack on the Intense team for a while, right?
Correct. Yeah, for 2019.
Okay. What was that kind of season like for you guys? For you getting was that your first like World Cup season with that team
It
or
was, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like I've been super lucky with people that have been on these teams and stuff like that. Like it was my first year, and like obviously there's so much to learn. Not so much like about the bikes and stuff like that, but the way things work, the way the World Cups work, you're dealing with nerves because you're at the pinnacle of the sport. And yeah, John, like in particular, John Hall, he just sort of like showed us. So Sam and I think Sam had done a couple of like World Cups and stuff before, but we're both fairly fresh. He just sort of showed us the way things worked, and he's got a similar mindset to me, or I've got a similar mindset. Like we just work similar ways,
Mm.
I think. Um, so yeah, like when we mostly had Americans and Canadians on that team, and so there was no language barrier or like
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. Just everything just worked really well. It was a super cool year, but the actual results and stuff like that, like it was a really tough year. We had some products on the bike that were not competitive compared
Mm.
to maybe some other brands, and it was it was really difficult. But I think like it it also made us think outside the box a little bit and try some different pieces. So there was some positive stuff in there as well, as much as the results didn't necessarily come around. I think like the best result we had was maybe ninth in Andorra, and I think he qualified seventh at Worlds, which was like a nice little sort of thing just to show the speed was there. Didn't necessarily translate over to the actual race result, but yeah, to be inside the top 10 a couple of times, especially on some stuff that was holding him back, was all right.
I was going to say that would have been like a super, super hard year for you to come in as the mechanic for your first year. Like the products weren't bad; they just weren't competitive, as you said. Like and he was struggling with them, and perhaps were you ever like second guessing yourself, or because you would have just come on and then.
No, like I think so, because maybe if it was just us that were struggling, maybe that would be the case. But I think it was quite clear, and looking back and after having conversations and stuff like that now, like it was pretty clear. It was a couple of things in particular.
What was it like working next to John and Aaron Gwynn? Like they're one of the power couples in the sport. Like
yeah,
watching those two work together would have been wild.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. John's sort of like a around bloke. Like he's very professional and he does his job fantastic. But I mean, just sort of his personality and stuff like that. So he's easy to get along with, easy to talk to. I was surprised that when I stepped in, that there was no ego. I thought that was going to be a big thing on that team. But no, fit right in. And it was really cool. Aaron is very professional, stuck to himself like quite a lot. So as much as I saw Aaron on a daily basis and would talk to him, he was, I want to say closed off, but that's not really like the right way to put it. He just knew what he needed to do and he just went about his way of doing things. And I just sort of, I guess, distance myself from that just so I didn't get in the way and interrupt anything.
He's a busy man, right? Like he's
yeah. I think it was roughly the time when he was building that big house and stuff as well. So he was like, any time that he was away from the track, and not like training and stuff, he had like stuff to do with that, whether it was like meetings or like ordering bits and pieces, speaking to like the contractors or whatever it may be. He was super busy man. And then like obviously that was, I think, the first year he was running the team. And so he was busy with sort of sponsor obligations and stuff like that as well. So yeah, I don't know what it's like now, but he was very busy back then.
You think you'd kind of get into a flow by now? It's wild, like that he's running that team and everything's going like that way.
For sure, and I think there'd probably be a few more people behind the scenes now that do a lot of work. I don't know about their team too much nowadays, but yeah, you would hope so.
So what did you kind of get up to in the Canyon years as Jack was like, obviously he was out dominating enduro on those and for 3 years? 2 years?
Yeah. So 2020, the COVID year, and then he had 21, all of the years were with Canyon, but yeah, 20, 21, 22, I didn't work with him. I actually did a bunch of things. So at the end of 19, I just stepped straight back into the store that I was working at previously. And I'd done days here and there throughout the year and stuff like that. And yeah, so I just stepped straight back into that. And it's funny because can easily get a little bored or frustrated sort of going back to the shop, or to a shop,
Mm.
just because you sort of have so much freedom on the World Cup. Like you kind of, even though there's a schedule, you do things almost when you want, like, and
Mm.
um, yeah, it's just like not a strict like 9 to 5 in any way. Even though like the level that you're working at, it's like it is higher, but it's not higher. Like you always want to do your best work. It doesn't matter if it's on like uh, you know uh, an elderly lady's bike or Jack Moir's bike. Like you always want to do your best, right? But yeah, there is a difference there. But yeah, got a little bored. The bike shop just with like the 9 to 5, and so I just tried some different stuff. Like I worked in a coffee shop for a little bit,
Sick.
and yeah, knowing like very little about like in general, it's like one of those things that once you get into something new, you realize how big it can actually be.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like scratch the surface there, but it wasn't my thing. It got very repetitive, like um, making a
Mm.
hundred coffees in an hour on a Saturday morning. Like was cool, but that was the cool bit. Like 1 hour a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so then I worked for a mate's irrigation company
Yeah.
in
Cool.
that time as well.
Yeah.
And but bikes are my hobby, so I always came back to that. I had some mates start up a new bike shop locally to where I was at, and so I went and worked with them for a little bit, and that was really good. I'd worked in a company a long time ago that had just started up, like another bike shop,
Mm.
and it's really cool to see people sort of like start something, create something, and then yeah, guide it into something good.
It's good to
And
have
then
that little break from bike. So like I'm currently not working in a shop and digging holes, and it's the same thing as you in the coffee shop. You don't realize how big the industry can get, and what there is in every little industry.
yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, sometimes you just need that break, don't you? Like, but then yeah, as soon as you get back into it though, like you find the love again.
Mm.
As long as you've had that good enough time, like um, yeah, that break. And now like the job that I have, I think it would be fair to say like working with YT, and like this is the best job that I've ever had. Just like the current situation and stuff like that is fantastic.
Where was the shop that your mate started up? Was that on in Oz or was that overseas?
In Oz, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, around the Gosford area, which is about an hour north of Sydney.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, so yeah,
So
like basically, yeah, I've lived on the coast a lot of my life. I love that area; it's fantastic. Um, and yeah, worked in and around there as well. Like tried to always tried to keep work pretty close to home, just to try and keep that work life balance. Be able to ride bikes in the afternoon and before
mm.
work and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So an hour north of Sydney is like 4 or 5 kilometers, something like that, roughly.
What do you mean?
Oh, it just takes forever to go anywhere in Sydney.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
I was there
Yeah, no, it's
for a bit
sorry.
and like went from the airport through Sydney up to the northern beaches, and it felt like I'd gone to another state in time wise, but it was like 30 kilometers. It was wild.
Yeah, once you get north of there, it's like God's country.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so surprised. The riding is so different up there. Like everything is so different. It's cool.
Yeah, yeah, because you're based in Adelaide, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's
right.
probably my favorite place in Oz to holiday, I reckon.
In Adelaide.
Yeah, I love because I love road cycling as well, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Like, yeah, can just Tour Down Under week is just like one of my favorite weeks. It's probably a very close second behind Cannonball Week. That's the favorite week of the year, I reckon. See a lot of people that you don't often see get to go race your bike. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like one of those just industry meetings, basically, and everyone actually gets to ride their bike together instead of talk about business. It's sick.
Yeah, and you see people from like 10 years ago that stopped riding bikes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like life sometimes just gets in the way a bit, and you see like a lot of like those faces coming back, and some of them like bring their young families and stuff like that. Love it.
Yeah, sick. So what led to the move overseas? Was it the job with YT, or was it you obviously got it? You moved before that?
Yeah, so I'd moved before that. My partner's from the UK, so she'd been living in Australia, and basically like a couple of things brought me over here or brought her back. Career. So then, like, basically the next step in her training was much better and easier to do over here. And then obviously to spend time with her family and stuff as well, which I think is really cool. Like, we're in a position that we can do that. Like, we haven't got too many ties sort of anywhere, and rather than just come over and visit her family for a couple of weeks, every year or every couple of years or something like that, get to know them like properly, and so just over here for a couple of years, really.
Was it a culture shock when you go over there to, I guess, ride? Everything's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, it's funny because I think if I talk about it too much, I'll sound like fairly negative. So we'll get the key points out of the way. Here, rubbish. The riding where I am is actually, it's a really flat area, so there's not much mountain biking at all.
Yeah.
And well, really, that's the two sort of like negative points. But we live in a really nice area. Like, we are right down south, pretty close to Bournemouth or Poole, and we have proper beaches. Like, it's like proper nice sand. Like, it's just really green. Like, we do live in a really good place. And yeah, like we're close to family and stuff like that. So it's perfect.
It's good to be able to just duck over to another country and go ride some weird, cool shit as well. Like, it's so much closer to everything.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We, in this last block of in between racing, basically, we decided to go on a holiday, and about 10 minutes from where we live, you can catch a ferry with your car across to France. And I was just like the biggest tourist. I was just like, you drive onto this thing, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then, like 4 hours later, you're like driving your own car in a different country, and we caught the Eurotunnel back, and I was like, oh, like getting on a train to go like to a different country. Like, it's funny. Like, I'm the biggest tourist.
Dude, I remember being, because I lived in Germany for 6 months or something, and we caught a plane to Barcelona, and it took like 30 minutes or something, bullshit like that. And I'm like, surely we haven't left Germany yet. And they're like, no, I'm like, no. This country is just so unbelievably big down here that it completely ruins your perspective of the rest of the world.
Yeah. As an Aussie, it's just weird, isn't it?
how can you drive across countries? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll drive for, I don't know, 8-10 hours, and you can drive across 3 or 4 or whatever.
Mm.
It's like this is just the tourist part coming out right now. Like, some people listen to this and it's just like normal, but you're like, oh, crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, but then they come down and see a kangaroo, and you're just like, "That's a kangaroo." Like,
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
what? Um, I guess, like, are you working? Were you working other jobs over there as well? Or did you get straight into a bike shop, or how did that kind of go about when you moved across to UK?
Yeah, so I didn't have the YT job at that time, and so um, I jumped in with a shop, um, but it was just incompatible with this role. Like, we're away for what, like 4 months of the year kind of thing.
Mm.
And so, yeah, to jump in and out, like it's fairly difficult. Like, the role I had with the store previously, like in 19, um, I guess you don't realize how lucky you are. Like, if they're just like, they just, send you off and just welcome you back whenever. But yeah, some stores aren't necessarily like that, and they need you there kind of thing. I don't think it matters like what job you have or anything like that. If you're taking 4 months off, like the employer like struggles with that. So, yeah, basically my sole job is YT, and even though there's a fair bit of downtime in the year, like a lot of that does still get used up. Like, there's always something to organize, or even though maybe the racing isn't all the time, like there's still things that go on in the background where you have to like be places and have things ready like well early and stuff like that.
What's it been like? So this is the first year for Jack on YT, your first time.
Correct.
But what's it been like? I guess the cool thing about the YT is you're running your own products, but what's it been like testing wise and getting everything set up and adapting to that new team, like having everything kind of happen again, like with what happened at Intense? Like, seems to have gone full circle.
Yeah, for sure. So start of the year, obviously the bike was new for him, and so we wanted to try and eliminate as many things as possible just to get him comfortable on the actual frame or bike. So straight away we went with basically all of the components that he'd used previously, or if there was something that he didn't necessarily like from previous, we put something on that he'd either used or was comfortable with. And we were testing, we didn't ever test different front triangles because we knew he was going to be on an XL, but we did play around with reach and stuff like that a little bit at the start. We also played around with some rear triangle lengths and stuff like that. And it's funny because what Jack was comfortable with at team camp, we didn't necessarily use all year. We actually we ended up on a standard headset where we didn't have any reach adjustment or anything like that. We ended up with the XL front triangle at team camp in January, and we ended up with the shorter seat stays, which effectively is a chainstay length. And at the first round, because he was still coming off an injury that he had at team camp, where he just punched a tree and broke his hand, we changed a bunch of things to make him more comfortable. And we actually stuck with a couple of those things throughout the season after that. And we've done like we did some suspension testing and stuff like that while we're at team camp as well with SRAM. Got a couple of different setups. Like there was a couple of shocks that he thought was quite good, and we've sort of moved throughout those in the year. And we've gone through like a couple of different products and stuff like that SRAM are testing essentially. So yeah, we haven't at the start of the season, we were testing a little bit, and we've done just little bits and pieces throughout the year. But we've basically Jack's been trying to get just like I guess at one with the bike, for lack of a better term. And I think like the off season is definitely the time to test rather than in the season. And so yeah, once we had the start of the season was done, it was time to go racing and not sort of like play around with too much.
Kind of find out all your benchmarks first. The whole swapping,
that's right, and then
the whole swapping of chainstays and stuff I found super interesting, because he went with a shorter chainstay, correct?
Originally, yes.
Yeah.
And then we changed that in Maydena or just before, just to add that little bit more stability to the bike, because he was going to be a little bit behind. It just sort of like the way he rode. So yeah, we sort of dulled down the bike a fair bit for Maydena especially. And then a couple of those things that we did actually just stayed on the bike, like the longer seat stays. And we've pretty much run that throughout the whole season now. But it's something that we'll go back to and try again. But I think something that like it's you don't just want to necessarily test one thing. Like you want to try and do one thing at a time. But what am I trying to say? So basically, there could be different setups that work, but not just with implementing one change. It could be like a couple of things actually make a better setup. So it'd be interesting to play around with a few different things in the off season, rather than just just implementing one change. With that sort of it's not real difficult to get across, I'm sure. I've just said it, so it doesn't make sense.
I mean, like if you're playing with chainstay lengths, then you've got to play with Forks' tunes because your weight balance is all off. And then I'm guessing your rear shock also needs tuning, and then your bar roll could be different. Like it's all stemming off of that chainstay length.
That's right. And it could be a few clickers here and there. May not be like a whole tune or anything like that. But yeah, that's sort of what I'm trying to get at is like, if you have time to explore, just by like changing one thing may mean that you require changing a few other things. It's not just a plug and play for the seat stay.
How many grips did you go through in that first couple of weeks of racing?
Do you know what we had so many? It was actually a bit ridiculous. And we probably tried 3 or 4, but we probably had, I don't know, 7 sets of grips or something like that. But when you're like, if you're used to a certain diameter or something like that, going like too far the other way it's difficult to get used to, even though it like might be better on your hand. It just feels weird, right? So you're like thinking about that and just taking like just that little bit of, you've got a little bit of distraction. So yeah, we didn't end up going too crazy and change too many.
Yeah, I remember him saying that, and I'm like, Yeah, you should just try the census, like the meaty paws would have been perfect. But then
Yeah,
it would have been a huge change because those things are fat. So,
yeah. Well, we did have those to try, but we didn't end up putting them on.
hmm.
Yeah.
Were
It
you?
was
Sorry, go ahead.
it was cool to see actually. So I think like he put a few things on his YouTube channel, sort
Hmm.
of like asking for some advice or some grips and stuff like that, and it was cool to see. I guess like how many people had their input, and yeah, we like there was a few things that I sort of hadn't necessarily heard of, and yeah, so we got a bunch of stuff, and it was all due to the people just helping out. That was good.
So many different grips. There's so many different ways to hold on to a handlebar.
Yeah, yeah, and people just get along with it differently, don't they?
Yeah, I can't run thin grips ever. It'll ruin my life. Like I can't do it. So, were you a part of the black box testing and development for the transmission stuff that Jack may or may not have been running really early in the year?
No,
No.
no, I had nothing to do with that. I'd um worked on cleaned up one of his race bikes, like canyon race bikes, at maybe the start of the year or the end of last year or something like that, which had it on it. I think I basically just swapped some bits and pieces out. That was sort of the first I'd kind of had anything to do with it. So my real sort of dealings with it was Team Kent, really, where we
Okay.
yeah, Nico there sort of showing us the ins and outs and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so no testing and development at all.
Has it still been like a major benefit for you guys? Like swapping out that rear mech takes what, 5 minutes now instead of a bit longer, or is it you had everything set up so well before that it didn't make a big difference?
I think like for working on the bike, I don't think it makes a big difference for myself. Like I I love the new stuff, but I think it's more the riding that good. Shifting under load is massively improved.
Mm.
And how quiet they are as well. That's not real. Like, I guess it's a little bit performance, but it's not really a performance game, but it is because you're not hearing anything.
Mm.
So yeah, that's like, I think the two key things that are a massive improvement. And then the reliability or like the serviceability of them is fantastic as well. Um, touch wood, like we have actually not broken or damaged anything transmission wise
Yeah, right.
this year. Haven't even replaced the cage. I think. Sorry, that's a lie. We did break a tooth off a jockey wheel, but like, yeah, that could happen to anything. Like ultimately, it's um, like a plastic piece, and we
Mm.
see, you know, everything snap in half from, you know, frames to seat posts. Like everything has its limit, right?
100%.
But
So
I
you're trying
think
to
that's
tell me that you haven't snapped your rear triangle off because of the transmission derailleur? Because apparently, according to the
no,
internet, everyone's going to snap the bike of that thing.
yeah. Look, there's lots of hate and there's lots of love. Like that's going to
Mm.
happen for anything, hasn't it? And like some people have like some valid points and bits and pieces, but not everything is always perfect in regard to like, you know, I'm sure SRAM is going to improve on this transmission throughout its whole life cycle.
Mm.
Like in some ways you like don't know how. It's like every year someone's like, oh, this is like such a good bike. How are they going to improve on it or particular product? They typically always do. Sometimes there's some backward steps, but yeah, like it's absolutely fantastic. And like I want it on my bike. I wouldn't run anything else.
It's pretty hard to say no to. Like I worked on it for the first time the other week, and I was like, okay, this all it all made sense on the internet. But then when I worked on it, I was like, this really makes sense.
Yeah, and it looks cool too, I reckon. Like
yeah,
and the EXO cranks and stuff like that. Like I think I only seen them for the first time last week. Like they looked cool on the internet, but like we run all the XX stuff. And yeah, so I'd only seen that EXO stuff for the first time. And it looks sick.
What's it? So I guess you guys are still running the same parts. Like it's a weird setup for you guys, right? So you've got 2 or 3 riders on the team, but they can all run different parts, but all have the same frame. Is that making it harder for you guys to carry spares, or?
In some ways, yes, and then in some ways, no. So I guess like the hard part is like before all the racing happens, knowing that you've got all of the different bits and pieces like ready to go, like the amount of product that you require, like in the warehouse to go to the races. So, yeah, you've got probably a lot more parts to actually organize, like, from brake pads on Jack's bike to Texie's bike to Casper's bike. They're all different. So that's just a simple thing to think about. So yeah, just remembering all that. But then on the other hand, mechanic has a little bit more responsibility to make sure that you have all those parts and you have sort of your parts put aside and all that sort of stuff. So also like I've not experienced this, but like another positive I see is that like you're accountable, and if you do run out of something, then it's on you. Like someone hasn't just grabbed like the last set of brake pads and not told anyone, or like the last whatever. So yeah, it's like accountability, and I think that is good. Yeah, so it does have its struggles, but there's some good parts to it as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Everyone's a bit more, it's like 3 teams, but they're all in one, and you're kind of working together, but also have your own unique accountability, I guess.
Yeah, so the load on some people is probably higher, but it's not a harder job to do.
Is everyone? It seems like everyone's quite intertwined and work really well together, though, as well. Like even though Taxi's on different brakes or different tires or whatever, and Jack's on his tires, it seems like there's a lot of swapping and testing and camaraderie between all 2 of the main riders, and then I guess Casper's coming back soon, so he'll probably be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's been unfortunate not to have Cappy around all season. Obviously, everyone knows the story there, but yeah, he'll be back at the last 2 rounds, so that will be really good. Each individual rider knows what they want, and they're different enough that nothing, like everyone's happy to test their own or use their own particular products, and not really like no one's trying to force someone to try something else, or if one of the riders was thinking of a particular product, they can then have maybe like a larger database of like knowledge and stuff like that. So you can probably pick each other's minds a little bit before you even test the product. So I just think like, all the riders do get along really well. But yeah, there's no like just trying to like, I guess, answer your question properly. It's like they all know what they want, so they're like, they don't have a bunch of weird testing together, or like there's not product thrown around and stuff like that. It's just like,
I guess when you're racing at that level, they want the stuff they trust as well. They don't want to be messing around with everything weird and wonderful.
And there's some like different approaches on the team as well. So, for example, Jack, like he hasn't changed too much throughout the year. If you look at Tassie's bike throughout the year, a lot of the stuff hasn't changed. Like but there's a lot of little stuff that has throughout the season. And it's just different mindsets. Excuse me.
Sorry.
I had a bit of a cold last week. Blow my nose.
That's all right.
Work back again.
Yep, it's perfect.
Okay, cool. Yeah. The riders have different ways of thinking. So like Jack is sort of more, if I run this setup and then get faster on it, whereas I think Tassie is looking for the fastest setup.
Okay.
But it's just the two different mindsets.
Was it a weird concept when you first started, when you heard like how it's going to play out?
I was confident in the program straight away because of the exact scenario that Jack and I had previously. So I thought that was really positive. The instant thought was like just the logistics of it. But once I sort of recognized that was going to be fine, and at test camp, people didn't go absolutely crazy. Like you could, try a bunch of different things, right? Like you could try 3 different sets of forks. Also, like you could change the shock with those manufacturers as well, or we could have something crazy like that you don't see very often. Like I think Casper at the moment has a Fox 36 fork in his bike with a Super Deluxe, I think, if I'm correct, still in his rear shock for his bike. So you could have gone crazy with various different combinations and stuff like that, but I think everyone was fairly sensible and had a good idea of what they wanted to actually try.
I thought it was super, super smart because YT don't make components, so it doesn't matter. Like they're not there. Surely a bit of advertising and money coming into the team from the products wouldn't hurt, but if you got 3 YT frames on the podium and they're all running different gear, it's got more to say about the YT bike than it does about anything else.
Yeah, and I think it's good for brands and stuff like that too, isn't it? Like if the winning bike has those products and stuff on it, and they've chosen it, they could choose anything. I think that's a pretty positive thing. And it's a bold move by YT because they're supporting the team throughout the whole year, and supporting that program. So that means like purchasing a lot of parts that essentially would have been given
Yeah.
in most circumstances, and probably money that goes along with that like with some sponsors. It's such a cool thing to be part of, and I don't know whether more people will do it or not. Like it's not the normal way about things, but that's the cool thing about YT is that it's not always the same mold as everyone else.
I mean, you don't have to use Sharpies either. Like you're not there sharpening out tire logos and doing everything else. So it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. That doesn't work anyway. You end up getting in trouble no matter what. So
yeah. You can't black out yellow. Like it never works.
No, especially like on the sidewall where it just gets scratched off and stuff like that as well.
So good. We might actually wind things back a bit, yeah. And we're kind of jumping all over the place, but I wanted to know how you kind of got into wrenching and how it all began, or even bikes in general.
Yeah. So I did my trade as a motor mechanic. So cars back in Oz. And I didn't really enjoy that so much. But I did my trade and I sort of stuck around for a little bit longer, but I knew it wasn't going to be a long-term thing for me. Like I just couldn't work on cars. Like I'm a pretty small guy too. So like lifting gearboxes and stuff like that, even though you've got like all these big stands and stuff, it was always like pretty difficult. And yeah, it was just time for me to step away, and a mate reached out to a bike shop that he used to work at, and they basically took me on, and this must have been 12 years ago or something like that. And just absolutely loved it. It's like I've always ridden bikes and stuff like that, and so just got along with it really well. Went through, I sort of like worked in a few different stores and stuff like that. I think that's super important too, because as much as changing job and stuff like that, I didn't change jobs frequently, but like every few years, like maybe 3-4 years or something like that. But you learn so much from other mechanics and the way different places work. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. So I think that like you gain a lot of knowledge, and that mine was like, I worked in like stores that predominantly like mountain bike orientated and then road orientated. And just like you just learn a bunch about like different products. Like you learn different tricks from different mechanics and stuff like that. And also like just getting along with different groups of people as well. And that's something that's like super important, that you can relate to the World Cup. Just because you're on a team with someone doesn't necessarily mean that you're like, they would be your friend outside of like work and stuff like that. And so, just learning all those skills like that were mechanically minded, but also that you get from just like life experience. But basically that's how I sort of started in the bike industry. And then honestly, I think like right place, right time sort of thing when I started working with Jack is like, I grew up in a similar kind of area. We knew each other, but more knew of each other. Like, there's a few years, like gap. So I seen Jack from basically the start kind of thing, like, racing at a wobber and stuff like that. And, but we've got like mutual friends, Newley, Jake Newell, he's, a family friend. Like I've been close to their family for a long time. Just sort of, he needed a mechanic and I was available. You also need to be on, most times you're on a pretty poor wage for your first year because you just want to kind of get in the door and cut your teeth kind of thing. So you need to be willing to, I guess, work for peanuts to start off with. So I was just in a position where I could do that, and things just aligned. So that's how I got my first role with Jack, basically.
I think, yeah, what you said about like moving shops and learning different things and being with different mechanics is such a big plus. Like you learn so much from each different mechanic in different shop, and there's always different ways of managing the workshop or parts. You can take a bit from everyone and use it yourself. It's a bigger thing.
Yeah, definitely. And the age of the different mechanics and stuff like that, or like their experience, like so I guess like when I first started, or like the first store I worked in, it was a very small company. I think there was just the three of us at when I first started there, and he'd run that store for a bunch of years, so he had like that kind of experience of, you know, when you had to face everything out of the box, and or like you know, you might have even got like a frame, like build up frames and stuff like that. But then there was a lot of stuff that I missed out in that store, like you know, as much as we were a mountain bike store, and we did like a lot of like XC trail stuff, so there wasn't like much downhill, which is in a lot of stores, or like not in a lot of stores.
Yeah.
But we didn't have hardly anything to do with road either. And not that that's absolutely necessary, but it just widens your repertoire, I guess, and also like the way you think about things when you're like working on different products. Like I think thinking back, like a lot of the tech used to come from the roadside, or like the roadside would get like updated and everything first, and then we would see it trickle across to mountain bikes. Whereas I think a lot of like they take a lot of stuff from mountain bike nowadays and implement that in like the road group sets and stuff like that.
100%.
And it's not always like just like one way, but yeah, I just think that you just learn a lot of bits and pieces, and the more you can widen that, the better you're going to be.
I think road bikes and TT bikes and that stuff is very interesting because they're so basic, and you're trying to squeeze out speed from them without having much to deal with. Like there's no suspension, there's nothing there. Like it's so hard to script. It's literally marginal gains with everything. And I think that's super interesting and fun when it comes to working on road.
Yeah. And there's I guess you, in some ways, you experience like things quicker than the mountain bike, like internal cable routing and stuff like that, especially like through the handlebars and headsets and stuff like that. So you kind of just you just see things and how they work and stuff like that a little quicker. Like, I wouldn't have seen that stuff for probably a year or so, really, if I was working in that same store. There would be people that had a year's experience on that sort of stuff before I did. So I think, it's just nice to move around a little bit.
Did you do any wrenching race-wise before Jack, or was he the first time you kind of went overseas and did anything?
I think I'd worked at a few events before. So I'd worked at like a Noosa triathlon, which was actually absolutely crazy. People
you can have that.
There was one particular person that he did the Noosa triathlon each year, and that was like the only time he rode his bike. So we did a bunch of work, like maybe, I don't know, $800 worth of stuff or something like that, Aussie dollars. So like £4.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of stuff to his bike, and he's like, "Yeah, I didn't ride this since like the last Noosa triathlon last year." I was just like, "Wow, dude!" Um, but it was cool because like he was only there for fun. Like there was no pressure or anything like that. But just that's the kind of stuff that you were getting at these events. And anything like from just the tube to a massive amount of work. But I'd worked at mountain bike events and stuff previously, but never for like one person. And then we had a couple of lead up races before getting to a World Cup that year. So we had nationals down in Bright. And we also did an IXS Cup in Maribor the week before the World Cup. So I had sort of like a soft sort of
software
opening to that. Yeah.
Did you do any work with Lockie McKillop? Or just no?
Yes. So I worked with him at a store in Sydney, or two stores actually, but never like sort of we might have gone to an event or something like that. I can't really remember, but yeah, I rode my bike, raced with Lockie. I lived with him for a bunch of years.
Sick.
And yeah, we worked in the same store or the same couple of stores for a bunch of years as well. So no, Lockie well.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I remember him saying he worked at like he did something and he was talking about you. So
you know what? He's been instrumental in my career with Jack as well. Sorry, Lockie, I forgot to mention that. But he sort of connected the dots there as well, actually. And we're in Whistler having a conversation about the Intense team and stuff like that. This is like must have been 2018. So that was early on in the year. And he was instrumental in connecting Jack and I as well. And then he's also just been really, really helpful, like with his SRAM gig, like obviously great sort of contact, but he just like with the stew and all that sort of stuff, like had me down to check all that out, and I took part in the course a bunch of years ago and stuff like that. So yeah, he's just been massively helpful and a good dude.
It kind of brings you back to like another part of working in different stores and different parts of the industry is like having those connections and meeting people, and like it's just this giant web of mates in some ways. Like that's how most of the bike shop jobs come about, or you just hear it from someone else. You never see one advertised, but there's always people getting new jobs.
Yeah. That's right. And that's good and bad. Like obviously I've been on the positive end of that quite a bit. It doesn't lend itself necessarily to professionalism, or having necessarily the right person for the right job all of the time. But like it's also very handy sometimes too, isn't it? Like, so you can't really hate on it when you've been on like the positive side of it. But yeah, I do think there's definitely room to improve, especially at a shop level, rather than just sort of, I think that like teaching a kid and stuff like that is super positive. Like a junior that wants to work in the industry, but providing the teaching's coming from the right person too.
It is a weird dynamic within the industry that way. Like there is a very big lack of professionalism in a lot of shops, and it just seems like it's a bunch of mates working on bikes still.
Yeah, in some
stores, yeah.
But yeah, it is like, and to be positive about that that is changing, and I think it's going to improve massively from the top with all of these motorcycle industry people coming into the e-bike world. I think that's going to, like, it'll take a long time, but I think everything's going to improve from the bottom and from the top. It's a much more professional industry, even compared to when I got into it.
It's definitely getting better. It's slow, but it's definitely getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your plans for the rest of the year? So you got Ludenville coming up. What else is kind of on? Is it just EWS stuff you guys are doing?
Yep. So we're actually going to go to, I think, Andorra and watch the downhill.
Sick.
Because that pairs pretty close to Ludenville. I think we're going to do like sort of a week of riding, which I earlier mentioned. I think that's sort of around Leger or something like that, or maybe Morzine. Head down to Andorra, check that out, and then we've got the next two races after that. So that's sort of our next block. It'll take about sort of 5 to 6 weeks. And then after that, we'll just have to sort of see what happens for myself. I'm actually coming to Oz in November for a bit of a holiday, see family. But for Jack, I'm sure he'll keep plenty busy with like YouTube channel and stuff like that. But it will be the off season, so he'll have a bit of downtime as well. It's not too much after the next couple of races.
Yeah, it's very condensed season this year. Like I keep forgetting that everything's pretty much already happened in the last like 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, it did feel like that. But then if you think about it, like it was all the way back in sort of March that we had the races in Maydena and Derby. I think like it is still fairly stretched out, but with the blocks being like, well, the last block being super intense. That's exactly what it does feel like. And I think it's only going to be more intense next year by the look of the proposed calendar.
That's wild, hey? Like, it's so packed in there. It's so packed. And an Enduro World Champs, possibly. Yeah.
That looks positive for a World Champs. Unfortunately, didn't get that this year. But yeah, hopefully next year it's all good.
Yeah, that'll be cool to watch for sure. I did like the Trophy of Nations though. I did like that format.
Yeah, it was cool, but I like, to be honest, I didn't follow it too much. I like the kind of basing around like the MX of Nations, or like similar to the way they do it. How like it is a team and like a nation kind of effort. But correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't really have a one-off result so much, did you, in the Trophy of Nations? Like one particular rider doesn't necessarily win. Is that correct?
I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think you're correct on that.
Yeah,
which is a bit weird.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's just me.
It's still rad though. Like I would love to go and watch it.
Yeah, and like I think last one was finale. And yeah, that's a super cool place, like to be so close to the beach and stuff like that. And then I think the terrain is like kind of similar to what you can have in Oz. Like it rides like pretty close. So as an Aussie, that's like a really cool place.
What's the best place you reckon you've been to this year, event wise, so far?
Do you know what? I think Maydena.
Dude, I'm so That was the most amount of FOMO I've had ever. I should have gone to that.
Oh no, yeah, didn't get there.
No. Yeah. I was devastated.
Yeah, it was a combination of things like the finish sort of area had such a good vibe, and it was like a sort of a stadium sort of finish. So that was really good, better than I think any of the other events that have happened this year. So that was good. The tracks were fantastic, and it was quite laid back because a lot of the teams don't have like a big professional setup or anything like that. So I think there was a lot more mingling, like because people were just in open tents and like it was very small and stuff like that. So overall, I think they also put on a really good event. The event village, like with all the sort of cafe food, bike shop area and stuff down the bottom there, it was fantastic.
DJs and free beer because they didn't have a license to sell it. And
oh, really? I didn't get in on that, but that sounds great. But the actual like some of the scenery and stuff like that, like Val de Fassa is right up there. That was really cool. Finale like with the ocean and then the mountains like right there. That's cool. There's positives with every single race and area that you go to. But I think Maydena, just because of the vibe and the finish arena, really made it like good.
It's crazy for such a little town in the middle of nowhere to be so damn good at putting on an event.
Yeah. The guys that run, or the people that run Maydena, like sure know how to put on an event. I haven't been, but the Enduro Jam Festival, Enduro Jam, is meant to be one of the best events each year. So be keen to get to that in the next year or two.
It's so chill. It's basically like just going for a giant group ride. It's such a good event. Definitely have to come down for it.
Yeah, that would be cool. I was hoping maybe this year because we were meant to be in Oz for December, but it's got pushed forward to November.
Yeah. Oh, well, next year we'll be sick.
Fingers crossed.
It was so good watching Troy following Aaron and all the Forbidden Boys just doing trains and everyone it was just like, watching people ride instead of racing. It was really cool.
Aaron's good on a bike, eh? He always he's good to watch. Always gets a little bit loose as well.
He is the definition of pull up, not out. Like he is 100% the guy that just goes, we'll see what happens. It is wild to watch him ride a bike. Scary.
And there's always there shouldn't be, but there's always this element of pressure when you've got like Troy or Jack or someone like that behind you as well. And like they don't expect anything from us, but there's still that little bit of pressure.
I dropped into Maydena and had like Baxter and all the local crew like following me once. And I lasted probably like 200 or 300 meters. I'm like, fuck this pressure, I'm off, and pulled over. Like, this is too much.
It's a weird one, isn't it?
But yeah, I want to see a race of mechanics actually. Like, I'd love to see mechanics world champs.
That would be cool. No beer drinking though, like the Boxer Worlds and stuff. Like I watched that. I watched the first round. That was really cool, but they were like having a shot whiskey and stuff like that at the start of it.
Yeah,
and no good. Absolutely no good.
No, if they just did like a proper mechanic and the rider had to wrench on the bike or something, like that would be sick.
Put the wheels on or something like that, like a Le Mans start. Put the wheels on and had to like bring the bike to the rider or something like that. And the time starts at the start, something ridiculous.
But like Aaron, and then you got Anthony Paulson, who was at World Champs, and then Ben Edwards. What's his name? Ben Edwards, I think his name is, from Pivot, like entering whip off and stuff. Like
Really?
many
I
good
didn't see
riders.
that.
Yeah, he does the whip off and like proper goes huge. Like he's really good rider.
That's mad.
So
I saw Anthony racing Worlds.
Yeah, he's too good. We should make it happen
because he was riding. He was like racing for Kona or something like that, wasn't it? Back a few years ago.
Yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
How he got involved with the team, and then kind of got over racing, I believe, and kept him on. Still rips. It's ridiculous. Might start wrapping things up here a bit. I'll let you get on with your day. What is some advice you'd give to anyone wanting to become a bike mechanic and then make their way onto the World Cup?
I think is just get experience. There's different ways about it. For what I spoke about earlier, like once you're already in the store, I don't want to say just change for the hell of it, but like you need to do good time in each store, so you repay them the effort for them essentially giving you your job. But get experience. Maybe go do events or something like that if you don't want to change workplaces, and just try and change the people that you work with a little bit to just gain different tips and tricks and knowledge. But there is other ways about it. I know Sam, who it was Nico's mechanic in 2019. He really wanted to work on the World Cup, and so he approached Todd, the team manager, and basically he said, you require more experience before we can take you on. I think Todd might have been with Norco or something like that a few years previous. And so they had him along to a couple of races, and he was doing some like background stuff, changing tires and bits and pieces. And then he went and worked in the store, like I think in New Zealand. So he was from the UK. He moved halfway across the world. And just gain that sort of like downhill experience working on like that sort of bikes, because they're big in like, Christchurch and stuff. So there's not one way to do it, but my advice is just gain experience.
Yeah. Work hard and learn harder.
That's right. You can still have a great time while you're doing that.
Yeah. Is there anything you would have done differently or regret up until now?
Probably there's always things that you could change to do things better, but regret, no. Not every decision that you make is perfect along the way, is it? But no, there's nothing I necessarily regret or I've like particularly done in a wrong way. I probably, I would say I'm pretty comfy with the way I've done things.
And if you are at a race and it's like pissing down with the rain or something's gone wrong and you don't really want to deal with it, or you're just trying to find some motivation, how do you kind of get motivated to do something? Is there like music or anything you listen to, or how do you kind of go about that?
Do you think in like a race scenarios in like I'm working at a World Cup or something like that?
Yeah. Like if you're working and you've pulled a big night and you really need to get motivated the next day or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm a fairly big routine person. So as long as I get my coffee in the morning, doesn't have to be a good one. I prefer a good one, but it could be an instant. But I like to always have a coffee before I like leave the hotel or you know, Airbnb, whatever it may be. Coffee, and I'm there to do a job and do a really good job, and I get paid for that. So I just have to remind myself that as much as sometimes it can be bad or it can be really good, you might want to go bike riding or something like that. But if things need to be done, you just need to remember that you're there for work.
That'd be pretty tough, I think, for some people. Like if you got, Andorra or Morzine or something sitting right at your front door and you go to work, like that's got to be tough for a few people.
Yeah. And sometimes it's in the preparation phase that you could easily go for a bike ride and maybe put something off. But preparation is where you do well as a mechanic or even like for the rider. So I think that, like this, for example, when we're, I think we're actually going to be in Morzine or Leger or something in a couple of weeks. When I'm there, if there's things to be done, like I don't go bike riding until those things are done. And it's just, you can, well, I was going to say you can, there's some people that do get lost in that. But I think like, I'm just lucky that I'm sort of like, I'm not old, but I'm old enough now and into my career that I can just recognize that when things need to get done.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's a good place to end on.
Cheers.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on and having a chat and fitting this into your schedule. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Easy, man. Well, take it easy and good luck for the rest of the season.
Okay. Cheers. Hopefully it's not too late for you. I haven't checked the time.
No, it's only 8 o'clock. It's all right.
Perfect.
Yeah. I've got an all-nighter tomorrow, so